There is no off season here at the Voice of College Football. Husker fans, gather round. Here we go for the next hour. Appreciate you stopping by. Leave those comments and questions. Justin Adams and myself talking the Huskers for a 161st time. Justin, how you doing tonight?
Not too bad. I haven't been here 161 times, but maybe one day I'll get to there. But yeah, a lot of
we're banking on it, Justin. We're banking on it.
Absolutely. I'm here for the long haul. A lot of recruiting news, a lot of fun stuff going on. So locking in those 2025 visitors. So it's getting interesting to see what kind of offers they're putting out and who they're lining up to get on campus. So
yeah, so let's get started there with the visitors that the list. What intrigues you? Who do you think are the highlights, and who are you excited about?
Yeah, just to start with, I did put a film breakdown out yesterday about Michael Terry. He was the number one athlete in the country and number 8 in the state of Texas, according to 247. And they offered him over a year ago. Nebraska was one of the first to offer him. So this isn't just kind of new momentum. It wasn't an offer that was put out. Now he's coming onto campus. They offered him over a year ago, Garrett McGuire and Matt Rhule, and they went out to his basketball game. So it's one of those things. They've kind of built this, foundation there. So there is something to this. And anytime you can lock up an official visit, there's substance to it. Somebody in the comments was just kind of like, shooting for the stars. Dion, how Dion is, but shooting for the stars. But one of those things is these guys don't lock up officials, especially when they're this high up, just to lock in officials. They're very strategic with who they visit because they got to use their time wisely. So Michael Terry plays 5 different positions. He's 6'3", 215. He plays 5A ball in the state of Texas. So it's not like the competition is inferior or anything like that. And he plays wide receiver, running back, cornerback, safety. He's their primary kick returner, punt returner, and punter. And so he plays literally everywhere, offense, defense, you name it. He's probably being recruited to Nebraska as a wide receiver. There was a couple of comments that, he had mentioned that they made, he said he felt like they want the best out of him there and wants to see him succeed. And then he said they want me to go to their school, but they want to see me get better as a person and player. They like, to recruit me as a wide receiver, but they think that I could potentially grow. So maybe he could turn into kind of a hybrid tight end type of player. But I think he will primarily be on the offensive side of the ball. But just, he's a track guy, win legal 108300, 1107, win 8 at 1083, and then a win legal 1107, eighth place in the high jump. So a dual sport athlete, 995 yards, 20 touchdowns, 564 receiving yards, and 10 touchdowns, and a pick 6. So he's just a pure athlete. This was all in the 2023 District 13 5A MVP honor. So that's just the accolades right there. And then when going through the film, it's first off, he's a freak of nature just in his stature and in his size. But when you have a guy who is a freak athletically and a guy who is as gifted as he is to be able to do everything well, but then also you add the skill set that he has on top of it and some of the techniques that he has on top of it, he's just a very, very, as far as when he's lined up at receiver, when he's lined up outside, he sells everything. Whether he's going on a block or whether he's going on a screen, he lines up consistently the same way, exactly as you want to. Good balance, doesn't cross his hands at the line, gets a good break off the line, and that is able to sell so many different routes for him. And those are the little details that separate good from great receivers. Is what's your ability to sell a play? There's this old quote that I like, and it's, how you play without the ball determines how much you love your teammates, right? And how he plays without the ball is just how he plays when the ball is coming his direction. So a couple of things like, there's a couple things that he gets away with because of his athleticism, but at his size, those are, he's a little bit, I guess when he's on the line, he's a little bit upright, but he's a tall receiver. Those are some of the things that you're going to expect, but he's more, He's extremely fast for a 6'3" guy. When he gets up to speed, he gets going, but he great off the line, great acceleration, and then the blocking. There was a blocking clip that I pulled up on his film, and he just blocks with violence and he finishes his blocks. And those are the biggest things you want to see is violence, finish, and he does a really good job of when he is blocking, it's almost like he gets off the ball quicker and attacks the leverage, and he's able to get them off balance. He sees the coverages. He sees how the defender's lined up on him, and he adjusts accordingly. He's very good at finding soft spots if need be, but just an absolute freak. And he fits exactly what Matt Rhule wants in the positionless offense. That's why, like, I'm really excited about the prospect of him visiting. It's going to be tough because he also wants to lock in a visit with Oregon, of course, Texas. He's on the top 10 Texas most wanted, the Longhorns, Sarkisian's most wanted people are players, and he's like number 3 on that list. So hopefully it's one of those things where Nebraska has a legitimate chance, and the fact that he wants to line up with Oregon doesn't mean like he's kind of indicating that direction, but we'll see. It's one of those things, as long as Matt Rhule has gotten to people on campus, that's been the biggest hurdle. It's just getting people to come check it out. And this is what I think fans need to understand is in the past, we weren't getting like guys like this to come visit. We were throwing out offers, yes, but getting them onto campus is a whole different story. And the way that the culture is built right now and the way that the team is talking and everybody's talking about how the feeling in the building is different, it just indicates that there's a movement there to where some of this talent that we may not get this year or we may not have got last year, but the momentum's building that direction. And, you're not going to be able to just change it around in one offseason. It's just a slow progression of this. But yeah, he's an excellent player. Like I said, he can do it all, and that's exactly the type of guy that they want on this team. So they're going to make a heavy push for him.
Fangway's pushing for Taco Tuesdays. Don't do
Yeah.
that to me. Don't do that to me. Give me 45 minutes here, because if you can just shut up about food, then I can go get something. But
Yeah.
right now, I'm not doing well here. I'm famished. So
I'm starving too. I'm not gonna lie to you, and I don't even have as busy a day as you've had. So
yeah,
no
the
excuse.
problem is some days I got to think well ahead of time, because once it hit about 2:30 today,
Mhm.
once it hit about 2:30 today, um, I thought, okay, I either need to decide like I'm going to eat right now,
Yeah.
or if I'm not, I got to make it all the way through to 8 o'clock, and then,
Yep.
then
Yeah.
I can cut loose. But I got to make it through for like 5.5 hours here, because there's no time.
That's a lot to make it through hungry. So,
So that's what we're shooting for.
yep.
So let's have
Um,
fun for 45 minutes. That'll
let's
make the
do it.
time fly.
Let's
But
do
I
it.
love the breakdowns, Justin. And if there's people watching us tonight that are not noticing, Justin is doing an outstanding job of hitting on a lot of key angles to the 2014 prospects coming out, all that sort of thing. So be looking out for those videos each and every week.
Absolutely. And I appreciate everybody's feedback on those. People have been liking them, so I appreciate everybody who's tuning in for those. But another one I did a film study on was TJ Latif, the quarterback from Orange Lutheran in California. A little bit smaller than we've seen them kind of go after recruiting wise. Dylan Rhule, of course, they like the big body guys that they're talking about can throw to the wind. He's more of a Danny Kalen size, 6'1", probably about a little sub 200, but that's something that he can fill into that size. One thing I noticed about TJ Latif's film is he's very good at recognizing shell coverages, whether it be open, closed. He's a very good understanding of identifying man coverages and zone coverages, because it seems like he attacks the soft spots in those zones. Cover 2, he attacks the middle of the field, and cover 4 quarters. He's going to attack those little zones underneath, in the in-betweens of those clouds and those quarters up top. And, in the cover 3 close, he has a good idea of route concepts and what route concepts are going to open up under which coverages. And not only that, he's very poised in the pocket. His feet don't get too crazy. He's very, very set. Every throw he makes, he's set with his base. And like I said, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on her. Glenn Thomas. He said, when you got happy feet, your mind's going crazy, right? So calm feet mean calm mind. So that's one of the things that I noticed, just very poised in the pocket. So 90 rated recruit, I believe, according to On3. And somebody that I think Nebraska is a good shot on. The thing about getting a 2025 quarterback that I felt like was going to be a hurdle is that you have Daniel Kalen, a true freshman, and you have a 5-star Dylan Rhule, a true freshman. And so, we missed out on our original 2025 prospect that we wanted to go after, but you got to understand it's going to be a little bit difficult navigating with the quarterback room we have now, because it's going to be hard to get a guy to come, as a true freshman and sit behind a sophomore, a 5-star sophomore, So we'll see how that works. I'm just curious to follow the progress on Latif and just see what headway they're able to make with the quarterback role. Outside of that, I mean, some offensive lineman stuff. Houston Kayana Torres. There's been 2 kind of offers, visitors scheduled for, out of the Hawaii pipeline. It seems to be the Polynesian pipeline is something they're going heavy after, which makes sense. Donovan Raiola's ties in there and stuff like that. So Houston is a interior offensive lineman. First off, I'm from Houston, so I love his name. That I can rock with. But he actually visited last April and wanted to schedule a fall visit, but couldn't. So he's gotten a lot of experience this past year playing, offensive tackle instead of interior offensive line. So, he had said, in quote, it puts him out there fighting guys on an island as opposed to when he's playing center. So it helped him develop his technique a little bit, but he's probably going to go back into the interior. But he spoke, about how comfortable he's getting with the staff, and even that Matt Rhule reached out to him before his season started in the preseason and gave him some tips going into the season. He talked about how much that meant to him. So him, and then Aiden Monotai, I'm trying to be better at pronouncing these names, but he's the other summer visitor from Hawaii. So right now they got those 2 locked up, and it's piling up. It's piling up. Like I said before, with a lot of these guys, we're starting to see the trajectory, because you see like Chase Lofton. Okay, Chase Lofton is 6'5", 213, tight end out of Omaha. They're really trying to lock up these tight ends out of the state of Nebraska, because there's a lot of good tight end talent in the state of Nebraska. His brother plays for Kansas State, but looking at his film, he's very good at finding the voids and the soft spots, middle of the field routes, a lot of stuff over the middle, just kind of like if it's not a quick slant, it's a little drag route, or he's going to be finding. They ran against a lot of zone in his film. It's a ton of zone coverage. And so what he does is he doesn't go too high to get to the safeties. He just kind of finds that level behind the linebackers, because, there's opportunities in zone. You take what the defense gives you, and that's what he's really good at. He doesn't try to do too much, but after the ball, you start to see that athleticism show, because he is able to move for a big guy very quickly. 6'5", 213. He's a tall guy, but he's leaner, so he's quicker. But really good, pretty good route running for tight end, standards. He's another one of those guys that probably it's at 213. They would probably line up outside potentially sometimes in goal line situations. So that is one that I believe Nebraska has a very good shot at getting, is Chase Lofton. The offensive line, we offered the number 1 top offensive lineman, but that's just an offer, no visit yet at this point. So somebody asked about him. I'll break him down more if Nebraska can land a visit with him. So that way it's a little bit more looking like we're in a position to land him. And then the other interior offensive line, Marcus Garcia, 6'5", 270 out of Denton, Texas. Looking at his film, really good pad level and drive. One of the things that you notice from him, and it stands out to me because looking at his profile before, he was a shot put and discus guy. So, he was an AAU Junior Olympics winner and discus, and finished 4th in Texas 5A regionals and discus. So that right there was just the indicator that of the power he generates, and it shows because shot put is very much getting a explosive movement to move a heavy weight with little to no load up, and little to no, you're just driving essentially. So you kind of load it up here, but you're just pushing and driving straight, right? As hard as you can. And so what that does for a guy who's a lineman, he gets really good at generating power from a standstill. And that shows up in his tape because he comes in with that low center of gravity, that pad level. He's really good at attacking the leverage, and he drives the defenders the way he wants to. You notice that as soon as if he needs to spread a guy, shoot a guy outside, he's going to attack that inside shoulder, and he's going to immediately flip his hips the way he wants him going, and he's going to attack his leverage backwards, try to get him off balance, and he finishes. And every block on his tape, he finishes the block through. And when I say finish, it's just drive through the block until the play's over. And if you're driving your guy to the 50-yard line from the goal line, you need to do it. That's what people like to see, because you don't want that guy to get back into play. So Marcus Garcia is another guy I'm excited about. And then and I think I think all these guys are visiting in April that I mentioned right here. Rylan Dillard Allen, he's from Phoenix, so he's from my neck of the woods out here. Dual sport track athlete, safety, 6 foot, 165, a little smaller, but ASU, of course, is going to be right now they're the percentage favorite to land him, but of course, getting him to campus will be the biggest thing there. But I wasn't able to find a lot of film on him just yet. And then Keelan Abrams, linebacker. Well, they have him listed as an edge on 24/7, but he's 6 foot, 195, so he would be a much kind of smaller edge. I think he's going to be a hybrid linebacker. He's from DeSoto, so more of these Texas, guys. They, 3 of the guys that are visiting in April are from the state of Texas. So the ties that Rhule has to Texas are really starting to show and get some momentum. But Kylan Abrams, he explodes off the line. He's one of those guys that, like I said, he's undersized for an edge rusher. So what he makes up for it with is just actual pure ability to be able to use spin moves and swims and rip throughs to be able to shed the blocks. And once he gets past the lineman, he's quick and he's able to just generate power and get around them. So, but his closeout speed is really good, and he's going to burst past you instead of overpowering you. But really good play recognition. I think he's going to be a linebacker that can play a little bit, of a hybrid, maybe a jack or a rover type of deal where he's moving around just with his size and his speed, but also could bring him, down on some blitzes. So with that edge rush capability, and that's what's important. A lot of his film is him coming off the edge, which is going to help him when we do bring packages of linebacker blitzes and stuff like that. But right now, with Stephon Thompson being, 6'3", 6'4", and some of these edge rushers, Keona Wilhite being like 6'5", a lot of the edge rushers that they do have are bigger guys. So, and even some of those guys might stand up and play linebacker from time to time. So with him, I think he's going to be more of a linebacker hybrid with some kind of maybe defensive back slid in there. But, with 3-5, they're going to be moving these guys literally all over the map. So, but yeah, that's our April visitors. And then Chase Lofton's going to be visiting in March. And then Michael Terry's going to be visiting April 27th for the spring game. So lot to be excited about. And they're shooting big on these guys.
Yeah, because you ran down a couple of weeks ago how high Matt Rhule's percentage rate was in terms of bringing guys on campus and how many he was able to sign. Now, we would expect that, correct me if I'm wrong, that percentage to go down, but that not necessarily to be a bad thing because the level of prospect coming on campus is going up.
Correct. Yeah. And the way it's probably going to be next year's class, depending, it's probably might be on the smaller side, but of course we don't know what movement's going to happen between, as soon as the season ends, how many people are going to enter the portal. So it's looking like it might be a smaller class. So even more so, Nebraska is not going to waste these visits. They're not going to waste these visits with these guys. And so I think that the reason the success rate has been so good is because that they are bringing the guys onto campus that they know they have legitimate traction with. And they're not bringing these guys that's like, this is a shot in the dark. Let's get them to campus and let's try to convince them. I think more so they're like, we have built relationships with this guy, this guy, this guy, and it's a long game for them. For instance, Michael Terry, they offered him over a year ago, one of the first teams to offer him, and now the fruits of the labor is starting to show. And I think more and more as Matt Rhule's here, we're going to start seeing that snowball of those things happen. And I think it's going to be one of those things where his closing rate's going to be good because the people he's getting to campus are, they're signing. And Ohio State, for instance, like I looked at Ohio State's numbers, and I think I saw they had less visitors than Nebraska did, but the quality of the visitors that they get, the standard that they have there, they're able to bring these guys on and know that anybody they bring in, they got a shot at landing. And so it's starting to get that way a little bit. And that's why I pointed out in the beginning when people are like, we're aiming for the stars, we're aiming high. But you have to, it's one of those things you got to understand at the end of the day that you're Nebraska and you're trying to get Nebraska back to what they were. And at some point you can't, I know we talk about development and the stars not mattering, but there's no secret that 5 stars make it to the NFL and are more successful than 4 stars and 3 stars and on down. So that's no secret. So it's for Nebraska to get where they need to be. We've been having top 25 classes of, 15 3 stars and maybe a couple 4 stars. Well, that's obviously not going to get it done. We're going to have to take that next step to compete with the Oregons, the Ohio States, because they have development too. Like Matt Rhule's a developer. I get that. Those schools can develop too. We have to start recruiting with those schools to be able to, especially in this changing upcoming Big Ten, to be able to keep up with the Joneses. And you got to win in today's college football world. It's recency bias for these recruits. They see everything. They see all the conversations going on. So even more so in the modern era of college football, winning matters to these players and these recruits. And as soon as they see it start paying off on the field, then we really, because coming off of last season, that offense does not look good. So the fact that they're able to get guys like Michael Terry in here on campus to visit, it says something. Now just imagine expanding that beyond that with a good offense, if they can field a good offense out there, because a lot of these kids have talked about one of the reasons that they want to come play for Nebraska is because of Dylan Rhule. And they've specifically mentioned that. There was an article 2 days ago about it. And he's reaching out to these guys. And two of the people that I can't remember that who were in that article, but they're probably going to be lining up visits because of the connection that they have with Dylan. So he's out there peer recruiting these guys too. And anytime you got a 5-star quarterback recruiting some of these guys, you'll be surprised what kind of traction you can make. And I think Nebraska's trying to take advantage of that.
Something you said about development and mentioning Ohio State reminded me of a stat that I saw a couple months ago that I thought was just remarkable.
Yep.
It ran down the number of 3 stars that each one of these schools in the Big Ten. So it was a Big Ten listing of schools producing the most NFL 3 stars. So before I looked at this, I thought Iowa, Wisconsin, they're going to produce the most 3 stars to the NFL. And yes, they were very high on the list. But what was startling was that Ohio State, because you figure, well, the entire class is 4 and 5 stars, so they're not producing 3 stars to go to the NFL, but they were second in the Big Ten in producing 3 stars to the NFL.
Yep.
And I looked at the last couple classes and they only signed like 2 3 stars.
Yep.
So I thought that's crazy, because Iowa's class, if they're signing 25 players, they're like 23 3 stars.
Exactly. Yeah. And if they do get a 4-star, it's an offensive lineman.
Yeah.
It's not surprising. The most successful teams develop the best, and people just think these guys recruit and then, here they're on the field. Well, look at Scott Frost. Nebraska out athleted most of the teams we played, minus Michigan, Ohio State, and probably Penn State, and maybe Wisconsin. Even then, I think we probably out athleted Wisconsin, but it doesn't matter what you look like when you get off the bus. If you don't have the skill set developed, you don't have the mentality developed, that's something that they do with those schools. CJ Stroud, for instance, right? CJ Stroud said the NFL has come so easy to him because of how much they put on his plate at Ohio State. He said the NFL is easier because they put everything into his hands. Like, he did everything in that offense, right? And they let him drive that boat, and that offense went where he wanted it to go, and they gave him full reign for that. And now he's in the NFL, and he's like, it's even less of that. Like, it's more structured for me here than it was there, and that's why he's been able to transition so well. And so even that, like, coming from Ohio State like that, it's those little things right there that are the difference in the two. And Matt Rhule you can see him trying to build that, but knowing that he had to come in first and build that culture and build this, and how quickly he's done it is just really surprising. But
the shows just keep rolling here at the Voice of College Football. So when Justin and I get done here, John D'Adamo fires it up over at Michigan Live. So the Wolverines channel it should be on your listing of Voice of College Football channels. You subscribe to all of them. But yeah, so take your love, your hate, your trolling, whatever you want to do, take it on over, throw it in John's face there at Michigan Wolverines Live. No, be kind, be
yeah,
respectful.
be nice. Y'all got to be nice to my guy John. He's cool. All right, he rocks with us a little bit. So.
Absolutely. Keep in mind, folks, that you can contribute super chat contributions here. We thank you for those. And also the Amazon link in the description section of this video. Every video, you'll see Amazon in caps and see a link right there. And if you use that Amazon link, then you are contributing to the Voice of College Football without even, you're just using Amazon like you typically do. We get a small little cut, and it makes a big difference. So please use the Amazon link, and it's completely transparent to you. Got a question for you, Justin, but before we cut loose on that, join Justin, of course, at Cheesy Corn Sports and also at the Big Ten channel.
Big Ten show.
Screwed it up.
Big Ten show.
The Big Ten show.
Yeah,
the Big Ten show channel.
Not the Big Ten network, all right? Somebody came into our comments and got mad at us because they thought we were the Big Ten network. And I'm like, why is that our fault? Like, he's like, who are these guys? I thought I was on the Big Ten network, and left a little clown emoji. And I'm like, well, that's not my fault. Like, I never presented myself as a Big Ten network.
Yeah, if they don't know the difference between the Big Ten show and the Big Ten network, there's a lot of traffic here on YouTube. So folks, get it straight. But that may help you guys out if you get people wandering in looking for the Big Ten network, and then they say, hey, this is pretty cool.
That's the equivalent of those people that'll leave like a 1-star review on the bike because they almost got hit by a car. Like, it ain't Amazon's fault. It ain't the bike manufacturer's fault you almost got hit by a car. But
exactly.
We can transition over. Interesting stat I found here. I believe it was Pick Six Previews, right? And Pick Six Previews tends to do these aggregate things where they have these adjusted formulas, and they tend to be pretty accurate. And the one that they did for this one was just the simple most improved passing defenses in Power 5 from 22 to 23 with opponent adjusted. And Nebraska was plus 24, which puts them at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, like 12th on that list. But then switching over into rushing offenses from Power 5 from 22 to 23, Nebraska was plus 23, which also puts them about 12th. So both of those, big improvements, passing defense, rushing offense. And I'm waiting for them to come out with the rushing defense one, because I'm pretty sure that one's going to be the top of there. So that's 3 aspects of the game right now that Nebraska is top 15 and improving in. So I think that is a testament to what this staff is doing, because they did that with a lot of the same talent, and then a lot of the talent being injured, a lot of true freshmen and a lot of young guys. So really exciting to see some of these numbers that they're coming up with. And the 8th breakthrough teams according to 24/7 Sports. Hold on, let me pull it up here so you can see the full 8 right here. Where is it at? I'll pull it up here. Sorry, I have a a myriad of tabs open because I have like a ADHD and I just kind of never close anything because I'm afraid I'm gonna need it later and I never do. So I'll have to find that in just a second. I don't know what I did with it, but yeah, they're on the top 8 teams of breakthrough teams in 2024. I believe it's right here. I found it. Let's see. Okay, so let me pull it up here. Present your screen. Sorry, y'all. I am technology illiterate. All right. USF, SMU, Tech, NC State, Virginia Tech, West Virginia, Kansas, Nebraska. Not necessarily the list of names that I want to share with, but you're starting to see a lot more of these national media guys, take the Nebraska story and run with it. And sometimes I'm wondering if they do it for engagements or if they're genuinely meaning that, this is what they expect from them. Also, breakthrough teams. I don't know if that means bowl game, but still interesting for Nebraska to be on here and starting to see like some of these trajectory, like I said before, like recruits and stuff, they're going to see these little things like that. And they're going to see that Nebraska's gaining momentum. They're going to start seeing the fruits of the labor pay off. And they're going to, the national, as Nebraska, it's always been a national brand, but as the brand kind of polishes and shines itself back up, I just think I think there's a lot of nuance here that people should be excited about that are kind of a little bit deeper. If you think a little deeper into them, it's all going to lead to success in the future. And I know Nebraska fans are tired of hearing it, but it seems like the national conversation with other fan bases still tends to be that Nebraska is just nowhere near where they need to be and never going to be that. And so
if you would, Justin, put that list back up.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So this is not necessarily a question for you, but if we had somebody from 247 Sports here, I'm wondering, okay.
Pull it back up.
Breakthrough. First of all, I want to know what that means.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I generally know. I get it with Nebraska. So Nebraska went 5-7 last year, and they haven't had a winning team since 2016. So I get that. They're an obvious choice.
Yeah, but Kansas.
Or an obvious candidate. Kansas went 9-4 last year. What are we expecting them to do this year?
That was my thing. Like
12-1? What did they like from 9-4? Where are you going from there? West Virginia went 9-4 last year. Where are they going? They're not doing much better than that.
The SMU.
SMU went 11-3 last year. Won the American Conference, and they're going to be playing in the ACC this year. And I might do a video on this list because I just can't believe how bad it is.
It's bad.
And Nebraska's the one that makes sense.
Yeah.
West Virginia went 9-4 last year. Virginia Tech, do I really think that they're going to they actually had a much better season at 7-6 last year than 3-8 the year before. They missed a game, didn't play a game, so I didn't get my math wrong, folks. 3-8 the year before. They go to 7-6. Are they going to keep going? Okay, fine, if you really believe that. But NC State was a 9-4 team. What are they like? I don't know where these teams are going.
That's why I was like, what's their threshold? And then secondly, like, are they doing these lists for just engagements? Because a lot of them don't make sense. And for instance, like there was a video posted a day ago from the same, no, it was on 3, about like, is Dylan Rhule going to start? Well, of course he's going to start. So it's like some of these things right here just are interesting, but at the same time, it's like, okay, it seems like just nationally, Nebraska is polarizing to talk about. It gets engagement, so it's trying to sift through what's real and what isn't. That's why I like more of the number stats, like the most improved passing defense and rushing offenses, because it's more tangible. This stuff is just kind of like conversational to get, it's like power rankings. Power rankings are really here for no reason other than to have a conversation. You have to get heated about them.
That being said, I'll probably produce some power rankings here pretty soon.
I mean, I do them too because they're fun and they get the conversation going. But like,
Yeah,
just turning power rankings into all these little lists, potential breakthrough teams with no qualifying anything. It's just like, let's throw some names on here.
this if Nebraska was not on this list, you know what I would almost think that this was a list of? I would almost think this was a list of teams that broke through last year.
Are playoff contenders, dark horse?
South
Maybe?
Florida, 2 years ago, Justin, was 1-11. Then they
Yeah.
went to 7-6 last year. They broke through last year. Are they gonna be even keep going from there? I
Yep.
kinda doubt it.
I doubt it, yeah. USF has not been one of those teams that when they go up, they stay up. It's been a climb and then a steep drop off.
And again, West Virginia, another example, 5-7 to 9-4. They broke through last year. So, yeah, that's kinda strange, but Nebraska belongs on that list.
Yep.
Yes, they do.
And then, so you had in your power rankings, or when we just talked about it, you had Nebraska at what, 9? Did you? I couldn't quite remember.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I didn't give it any thought. We just
Right, exactly. We just
Yeah.
kind of ripped off.
I think it was 9. Yeah.
In your opinion, because I've been having conversations on the Big Ten show. We had an Oregon episode and some other stuff where we're talking to these guys, and there seems to be this thing between the Big Ten and the old Pac-12, where the Big Ten teams think that it's going to be a difficult transition for those guys into the Big Ten style of play. The Pac-12 is Scott Frost style, thinking they're going to have to adjust to them. And in your honest opinion, and this is the most difficult thing when doing kind of the power rankings and breaking down what it looks like next year. And I see Moose, our schedule is brutal. Yeah, they didn't do Michigan no favors. But when it comes to doing that stuff, where do you put a team like a USC in the equation against a team like a Nebraska or Wisconsin? Because on the surface, of course, USC looks like they're ahead of where Nebraska and Wisconsin are. However, losing talent, coming over from the Pac-12, and then Wisconsin's probably going to take a step next year. Nebraska should take a step next year. It seems almost impossible to try to gauge what they're going to look like, and is the cold weather going to be a factor, like the grind of the cold weather games for the Pac-12 teams? Like, what is your take on that from an outsider's perspective? Because I firmly believe that the Pac-12 is going to have a little bit of a hard time adjusting to the grind of the Big Ten schedule. And then I have another question outside of that too.
So you're totally right that it's been my experience that ever since this was announced, we're looking at 2 years now, USC, UCLA, but then the other two coming on board, that when there are Big Ten fans in the chat, they say, oh, we're bigger, we're stronger, we play tougher ball, we play in the cold. They're going to have a tough time adjusting to us and adjusting to our style. They're going to have to man up. They're going to have to hit the weights, do all those things.
Mhm.
Okay. The Pac-12 fans have said, have you seen our offenses? Have you seen our speed and space? Do you see our quarterback play? We're going to be running those guys all over the field. Well, as I tend to do, I pull both of them off of the ledge because they're both on far extremes for one thing.
Exactly. And that's why I'm asking you. I'm
An
curious.
extreme.
Well, you're a Big Ten fan, but you're a little you can separate it more than most.
Yes, because that's how I approach all of this. Let's understand that what I would have really loved to have seen, Justin, was last year's Pac-12 teams play the Big Ten, because now we're down Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Michael Penix, Cam Ward.
Yep.
We're missing the best quarterbacks in the Pac-12. They had a surge, and that's one of the reasons why the Pac-12 was so much better the last 2 years than the Pac-12 was running close to a decade of garbage.
Yeah.
Like, they were the worst, battling with the ACC for the worst conference, and they really had a surge the last 2 years, played very respectable football, and much of that was coaching upgrades all over the place. Lincoln Riley, Kalen DeBoer, on and on and on, Dan Lanning, and then quarterback upgrades. All those guys are transfer quarterbacks that I just named and more. So that was part of the equation. But I think that a lot of that was temporary. We've
Yeah.
seen Caleb DeBoer leave. We've seen all these quarterbacks. They're moving out to the NFL. They're not being replaced by quarterbacks anywhere close to what they are. I'm not saying that they aren't decent players, but
Except maybe Oregon.
except maybe Oregon. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Dylan Gabriel might be able to match and be in that same range as a Bo Nix. But otherwise,
Didn't they get Dante Moore too?
oh, they got Dante Moore to
Yeah.
be their future guy.
Yep.
Absolutely. And he had a rough ride at UCLA his freshman year, but still tons of
Yeah.
talent, upside. People need to also, on the Pac-12 side, I've had to lower the hammer on this one. They don't realize that there are typically about 350 to 370 SEC players in the NFL.
Yep.
The Big Ten number's about 70 or 80 less, usually, right in that range. And then the Pac-12 numbers, 100 less, 120 less. There are more players. So I've challenged Pac-12 fans that have been like, oh, we would just run Iowa out of the building. They can't score. They can't do this. Well, you're not going to be playing that kind of game.
Yeah. No.
And understand that you are going to be lining up against more NFL players in the Big Ten than you were in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
But I think when it's all said and done, I would lean more toward the Big Ten because the Big Ten was a better conference. But it's not. There are going to be weekends where we're going to say, see, like the Pac-12 fans, the old Pac-12 fans are going to be beating their chests, say, see, USC ran whoever, Minnesota out of the building. They beat them 48-13, see? But then the next week it's going to be, oh, Iowa took down Washington 10-7.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be running the numbers just like the nerdy kind of people that do this sort of thing. Yeah. I'm going to be at the end of the season going, okay, this is how hard it was for these Pac-12 teams, or this is how successful. But you know what I'm going to anticipate? It's going to be a mixed bag.
Yep.
It's going to depend on matchups.
My question to follow up on that, based on the styles that you were talking about, the Iowas and Minnesotas, do you think that the fact, and I saw this somewhere, so it really, really stood out in my mind, and I was kind of thinking about it. I'm like, that's interesting. Do you think that these schools in the Big Ten West that have been recruiting for the style of Big Ten West football are going to be holding themselves back now because they're still recruiting in that same way? Or do you think that they should adjust based on the way the conference is going to change? Or should they just stick, because by what we're talking about now, that's sticking to the tried and true Big Ten? And so do you think that's going to hurt them though? Or do you think that they should transition into kind of a more balanced?
I think that the offensive style and the way they've recruited and run an offense and approached each week that, okay, we're going to get into a slugfest. We're going to run a limited number of plays, 55, 60 plays, not 80 plays. I think it's going to tend to, and again, this isn't an absolute because it's going to be 100% one way or the other. I think it's going to tend to hurt them.
Yeah.
I think that they're going to have to play in more games. And this is not just against the Pac-12 teams. This is playing more Big Ten Eastern Division teams. This is going to be seeing Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State on the schedule more. You're not going to be controlling a game 10-6 in the third quarter all the time. You're going to have to keep up.
Yeah.
You can't put that kind of pressure on your defense all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Because you see these, like, for instance, Nebraska. I don't feel like Nebraska is recruiting in a Big Ten West style. Wisconsin, I don't necessarily think Wisconsin's kind of going away from the Big Ten style. But then you have the schools like Iowa and, Minnesota, some of these other schools that are just going to stick to their guns and do what they do. And that's another interesting dynamic, is to see who sticks with their bread and butter and who sticks with, and Kirk Ferentz ain't going to change it up. Kirk Ferentz is set in his ways, and there's a reason he is. Like, it works. What he does well, and he does it with, hasn't always had a ton of talent there. So it makes sense for Iowa, but I was just curious to know if they're going to kind of get left behind in that regard, based on sticking to just comfort in what they know and not adjusting with the times. Because I feel like there's going to be schools with that mindset that the Pac-12 is going to have to come over here and they're going to have to play, bully ball with us, and they're going to lose. And that's going to make them double down on what they do already well and not expand outward. So I just, just looking at the dynamic of the different recruiting styles between the teams from the West, that was just something that stood out. And I'm really curious to see how that plays out. But I was wondering your thoughts on that.
I think the weather factor is overplayed.
It is 100%.
Considerably.
100%. I agree.
Is it going to be a factor? Yes. Are there going to be games? Yes. But this is not the NFL, folks.
No.
There are not games in Cleveland in January or in Green Bay in late December.
Yep.
No, the season's over the first week of, the last week of November. The championship games obviously played indoors.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Minnesota's about as cold as it gets in the Big Ten. Minnesota, Wisconsin, those are the two areas in particular, but also Nebraska, Iowa. Put it this way. There are 4 weekends in November. Like, when do we see our first weekend where, okay, the cold is affecting play?
I'm in Arizona, never.
Okay.
But outside of
for you, no, I'm talking.
Yeah, no, I know.
Exactly. It's less affecting in November than it was because it was 114 degrees the first game of the season. Yes.
That's why I go to September games in Nebraska.
Yeah, you're liking the late November games in Arizona.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't believe it from the and I'm going all over the place, but I'll get back to the Big Ten weather discussion. But it didn't strike me until last year when you guys were having those ridiculous temperatures that, there are games at Arizona and Arizona State, and it's like 108 degrees.
It was 115 for over like 2 weeks. And it got up to like 120 at a certain point, like 2 days it hit 120. Yeah. Rough.
I hate the cold, and the older I get, the more I hate it.
Yeah.
But if you told me right now you're going to go outside and play a football game in 30 degrees or 115 degrees, that wouldn't even be a choice. I'm going out and playing in 30-degree weather.
I'll bundle up. I'll play the heat. Give me the heat.
150. There's heat and then there's heat.
Yeah.
85. Yes. Give that to me all day.
That's when I'm putting a jacket on.
30 or 115. Yeah. So, but I was thinking about this when these decisions were made. These teams are headed to the Big Ten, and everybody starts in on the whole weather debate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're playing 4 weekends in November. Usually, I don't notice any weather aside from weather that we could see at any time of year. It could be a downpour in the middle of July, but I'm talking about cold. The last 2 weekends of the season, I mean like sub 50. The last 2 weekends of the season, even if we go a little bit earlier than that, consider USC, UCLA. They're going to play half of those games in November at home, number one. So it's eliminating those. And then the other 2, sure, they could be at Nebraska. They could be at Minnesota. They could be wherever. The Pac-12 isn't just all nice sunshine and heat. It's not all Arizona, California.
No.
Seattle's nasty in the winter. Oregon, they have to go to Colorado and play.
Yep.
Utah.
And another reason that I think the weather's overplayed, to expand on that, is when we're looking at recruiting, right? We're not looking at like, oh, this kid's from Texas, we shouldn't recruit him to Nebraska because he's not playing in the cold weather. But for some reason, when it comes to when they get in college, all of a sudden we're like, well, he's going to struggle in cold weather. Well, if he's played his whole life in Texas and we're trying to recruit him to the Midwest, like how many Texas players have come and played well? It's never mattered about what environment they played in before. And if they can do that in the transition from high school to college, then they can do that in the transfer from conference to conference. In my opinion, I think it's more so just the grind of the Big Ten schedule and the style of play. I think the weather is just something that's added in there because, like you said, Seattle it's not pretty weather all the time. And because I have family in Seattle and it gets nasty there, and it's not, that's why I think it's overplayed. It's just we put a standard on it, but we only use it when it's convenient to us and works in our favor for the argument. It's like
Two of the greatest cold weather quarterbacks in history. One of them's a California kid who went to Michigan. And again, because the college season isn't that cold, didn't have to deal with it in college. But then he went to New England and he played in blizzards. Of course, his crowning achievement to launch his career was, of course, in the blizzard game against the Oakland Raiders. And I'm talking about Tom Brady and then Brett Favre.
I thought you were talking about
grew up on the coast in Mississippi and never saw snow in his life. And
he played in Lambeau.
Played at Lambeau for all those years.
Yeah. It's that part's overplayed, but I do, and I think teams like Oregon, for instance, Oregon's one of the teams that I think will be fine no matter what, just because they recruit players just like Ohio State, Texas, and all them. I think teams like Oregon are going to be fine. I think everybody else is going to have a little bit of a struggle, but Oregon is so constructed as like one of they're constructed as, in my opinion, a top 3 team in college football, or top 4. I would put them top 4 right now, the way it currently sits. And I don't think the Big Ten schedule is going to be an issue for them.
Now, what is being alluded to here? Sorry, I don't have my glasses on. Negative Mike. Now that's a whole different story. The playoffs, the on-campus playoff games. Now there's not going to be many, but those could be fun. Mid-December, somebody's got to go to Wisconsin. If somebody's got to go to wherever, Michigan, to play Nebraska, hopefully hosting a college football playoff game. Wouldn't you love that?
Or we just get a bye and don't have to worry about it. And we can just go play at the Rose Bowl or something.
Baby steps.
Yeah, I know.
And those aren't even baby steps.
No,
we're to the playoff, hosting a playoff game.
Right. Bowl game then playoff.
But yes, if Florida State's got to play at Nebraska in mid-December. Yeah, that could get fun.
But it's a fun conversation to have for sure. And especially now that we're starting to see some of these teams recruiting styles. I just think I think that is such an intriguing thing that not enough people are just kind of looking at, is to see what styles of recruiting change. Do any of these teams change their styles, or do they keep it all the same? It's almost as if we're acting like the next season is not going to be a just complete different whole entity of what we know.
All right. Justin, what else did you have on your list? Anything else? There was a documentary.
Oh yeah,
you wanted to get to.
Yeah, well, there's and it's just a very. I watched part of it. It's I forget what the name of it's called, but y'all see it. It's on YouTube. It's a documentary style like they normally put out. But it was, and also wanted to talk about adding into that was, the overall feel from the program. And I mentioned this earlier, but just in listening to parents talk and players talk, and seeing the Nebraska football team did a dunk contest during the basketball game at the halftime show, and that was put out everywhere, and just the feel in everything, and the way Matt Rhule's out there interacting with these players and having fun, and these players are just having fun and stuff like that, and you're starting to see this culture and this new culture kind of build in there. And when they're talking about Nash Hutmacher, who went to wrestle this year for the first time in years, got his weight all the way down from 330 after the Iowa game to 285. And he went in there, and wrestling is the hardest, because I box, and I say boxing is probably the second hardest thing I've ever done. Wrestling is the hardest thing to do. It is the most grueling training that you will ever be a part of. And, the coaches had his back, let him go into that. He hit his weight goal, made his first match, and he talked about how important it was for him to be able to, do that. And his parents talked about it. And a couple of these other guys that are coming over here, and this is another intriguing thing for these dual sport athletes that may want to come over here and play multiple sports. They have, in that documentary, Matt Rhule almost kind of encourages it. He's like, it didn't bother him that he was going to go over and wrestle. And so the coaches, Nash Hutmacher said it felt like everybody had his back in this. Gibson Pyle, they talked about the relationship that the coaches have with Pyle, and they said after 4 hours of the visit, he was ready to commit. And, he's a near 4-star kid for the state of Texas. Willis McGahee the fourth, Coach Rob Dwarvchek, his parents mentioned that Rob created this family environment and just maintaining consistency throughout the process. And that Coach Rob hasn't changed. And this is one of the biggest things that I think that I talked about the most is in these long connections with some of these recruits that are going to be visiting campus. When you talk about a guy like Michael Terry and they say they offered him a year ago and have been in touch with him ever since. Well, that's all that a lot of these guys have pointed to as the reason why the parents, think that this is a place for them. They say Coach Rob hasn't changed. In the entire time they've been in contact, he hasn't changed one bit. Nothing's changed. The messaging has been the same from everybody they get. Jamal Banks, the transfer we got from Wake Forest, he mentions that it's family oriented and it feels like home. And he said what they wanted to do with him was tweak him on the field to be a better him, and overall support him emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically. And he said that Nebraska was the school that did that the most. And so I think hearing a lot of these player testimonies and hearing a lot of the parents' testimonies is really going to clue a lot of people into what is going to make this successful. And Chasing 3, that's what it was. Scott put it on there. But yeah, excellent documentary. And I think people can get kind of an inside view into the mentality of the staff and what's going on behind the scenes there, because there's a lot.
Folks, if you want to know why the Big Ten wants a 14-team playoff, I dropped the link, even though it's not a clickable link. I don't know what's going on with my account. The last couple of times I've tried to drop clickable links in chats, it's just not doing it. But anyway, the URL is right there. So over on the main channel, again, the 12-team playoff was tweaked, of course, with the Pac-12 demise just about 5 or 6 days ago. That was announced. But then right after, we caught wind of discussion that 14 teams is on the table. There's a couple key reasons why the Big Ten would want 14 teams. And I'm not talking about the obvious, you got a chance of getting another team in because they're going to select 2 other teams. Yes, we know that. But there are definite reasons why the Big Ten would want a 14 team. And I believe why they are one of the big forces behind an expanded playoff, and especially the 14-team model.
I dropped the link in the chat, so if anybody wants to click it, it's
Thank
there.
you for that.
Yes,
John's getting revved up right now with the Michigan live show, so head on over to the Michigan channel.
Go see
and the Big Ten show. What's going on over there?
So we posted a Illinois and Rutgers program overview. So it's just dialing those up. Oregon was our biggest thus far. Oregon fans came through heavy. We got almost 100 subscribers from that video, and they rocked heavy. So we need when we do the Nebraska one, I'm going to need Nebraska fans to show up big time for us. So I'll keep everybody updated on when we're dropping that one. But just going through the Big Ten teams right now and trying to make content for the big and small teams. We're trying to just put a uniqueness on that and not just cover the big teams. We want to cover every team in the Big Ten. So very
cool. Justin, as always, appreciate you making this happen.
Appreciate
it, folks, we'll be back here next Tuesday at 7 Eastern, 6 Central. In the meantime, Cheesy Corn Sports, the Big Ten
show.
I almost said Big Ten Talk. The Big Ten Show. I will get it right one of these weeks. And, of course, everything we've got going here at the Voice of College Football, Michigan, live right now. See you next time.